All right.
And we're live.
Sweet. So just kind of go whenever. All right. Welcome, everyone. I am glad to see you here. I'm glad to see that there are people watching and waiting and interested in what I have to say and reading. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll get going with the reading. So my name is AC Cross. Like the bio says on the website, I am a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. I got my PhD in communication in 2019, which has led to a grand total of 0 jobs. So we're going to go all in on writing for right now. I've written 4 books, 3 of which are spy and thriller comedy. Think Archer with a Twist, Doctor Who. My newest book is a big departure as a weird Western that's basically Red Dead Redemption 2 crossed with the Cthulhu mythos, sort of. So the story of Where Blood Runs Gold follows Sheriff Errol Thorpe as he deals with dust with a capital D that can eat a person in seconds. Dangerous politics, his past coming back to haunt him, and taking care of a teenage girl he rescues from a very dire situation. So the scene I'm going to be reading to you today is from chapter 9. Thorpe and Greta, who's the girl I mentioned, were headed back to Thorpe's hometown of Santiago, which is where he was sheriff, when a dust storm, again, capital D, kicked up and they were forced to shelter at Redemption, which is a cult commune that Thorpe had fought his way out of before. This commune is run by Reverend Good, a charlatan turned something darker. Now, in this scene, Greta and Thorpe tried to storm out of a meal and then saw something terrifying underneath the face of the Reverend. So they've been placed under guard and watch the doors leading out to the main area of the compound. And we pick up the story. The doors lurched open, and the trio, followed by the 2 guards, stepped outside to a grim sight. The lanterns lining the streets had been snuffed out and replaced with row after row of burning torches. All the inhabitants of the town were gathered in the center, their white robes replaced with golden attire. The stagecoach driver was in ropes beside the giant iron door. Even from this distance, Thorpe could tell his face was bruised and swollen. What had they done? Now, Good said with a flourish of his arm, he is what you could aptly call a prisoner. He must have been found wanting. Such a shame. Come, let's join the town so they may pass their judgment. You may yet have your question from earlier answered, Greta. Down the path they went, accompanied by their armed sentries, until they reached the circle. As before, the mass of bodies parted, and Good walked through them until he took his place near the door. Thorpe and Greta were ushered to a spot behind him and sat in chairs. Good extended his hand in supplication and spoke. My dear family, you have been given time to weigh the soul and heart of this man before us. What have you found? A small, mousy woman stepped forward, but when she spoke, voice was powerful and easily heard. Our dear father, through the trials and customs of our congregation, we sought to divine the true nature of this man, Wilbur Thaddeus Thorson. The driver, Wilbur, sobbed and tried to stand up, but a blow from one of the nearby worshippers knocked him to his knees. My dear sister, what have you found? Good continued. Our dear father, the soul of this man is unclean. We sought to drive the devil from him, but the grasp of evil is simply too strong. He has been provided every opportunity to repent of his blood, yet he has remained steadfast in his sin. His wicked ways have tainted him, and he refuses to seek redemption, though it has been offered time and time again. You fucking crazy fucks, Wilbur spat out as he wept. Another punch sent him sprawling to the stomach. For God's sake, you made your fucking point already, Good, Thorpe yelled as he tried to stand. Let the poor bastard go. Boos erupted from the crowd, but Good held up his hand. Without turning around, he spoke to Thorpe. Sheriff, I would not deign to direct you on how to police Santiago. You know best. I ask that you provide me the same courtesy. But these are not your ways, they are ours. This is my home and my flock. I am their servant, and I give of myself without pause or a second thought. As you are Santiago's protector, so too am I the protector of redemption, and as such, am tasked in shouldering the heavy burden of discipline. Please allow us to conduct our business as we see fit. If you will not, you shall be muzzled. Proceed, my dear sister. What judgment do you recommend for this sinner? My dear father, though it pains us dearly to condemn a soul, we believe that this man is too far lost to return to the light. With heavy hearts and heavy prayers, we, your children and your beloved, recommend that Wilbur Thaddeus Thorson be cast down to be consumed by sin. The crowd cheered, and Good allowed them to do so for a minute before quieting them down with a raised hand. My dear sister, your judgment grieves my heart as well, but I trust in your divine guidance and the sanctity of our customs. Wilbur Thaddeus Thorson, you have been judged, found wanting, and sentenced to cast down to suffer in sin. Have you any final words for posterity? Wilbur looked up with hate in his eyes. God damn you all. Every rat bastard one of you should swing for this. You hear me, Sheriff? You hang 'em all. Thorpe nodded, although he didn't know if the man could even see him at this point. His stomach ached from helpless guilt, and the tears running down Greta's face only amplified his sickness. He grabbed her hand in his, and she squeezed it tight. Don't you look, Greta, he whispered. I don't know what's coming, but don't you look. Close your eyes and pray that it's quick. No, Errol, she whispered back. I won't look away like those sons of bitches who looked away when they saw me at the hotel, who walked right by me and tried to pretend I wasn't there. I won't be like them. I won't look away, not ever. Good shook his head and motioned to those near the door to start pulling out the thick, heavy bar, locking it in place. He made his way around the circle as he spoke to Wilbur and the crowd, almost preening to the rabid horde thirsting for blood. Defiant to the last, Wilbur, even with time enough to repent, even now, you choose violence and hatred. It gives me no pleasure to see you end your days in sin, yet the world demands that evil be punished and cast out, that it be driven from our lands and world by great force. You see, my dear family? You see what the world outside brings? Chaos, disorder, hatred. Still, we must love them, all of them, the wicked and the sinful most of all, for they are most in need of forgiveness. We will offer them every chance to repent of their vile and base degradations and to join us in the golden fields of our giver. They will come to us or we will go to them. They will listen, they will learn, they will repent and join our family. Good stopped his walk to lock eyes with Thorpe, intent heavy in his gaze. His voice dripped with menace. Or they will die. The clang of metal as the bar was pulled out from the door punctuated his speech, and the crowd started to cheer as the door creaked and opened. It slammed to the ground, sending up puffs of sand and a deep animal odor that poured from empty blackness of the hole. Even from where Thorpe sat several feet away, the reek of blood and rot and fear nearly made him gag. It almost seemed to stick to everything it touched. Even Good slightly winced as he smelled it. My dear brothers, Good said with solemnity, bring forth the condemned and place him near the pit. Two nearby townspeople grabbed the bound and struggling Wilbur and dragged him over to a worn, stained circle right at the lip of the pit. He continued to writhe as they held him down. Place the incisions. Those of you who have delicate constitutions may look away. As the two people held him firm, the mousy parishioner made her way over to the thrashing man and drew from her robe a shimmering black knife. The edge was so sharp that simply pulling the knife out was a large slash in the arm of the robe. She knelt and quickly and cleanly made several shallow cuts along his arms, leg, and stomach before drawing a long, deep stripe across his chest. He was screaming now and stopped wriggling around. Something about the placement of the cuts had rendered him immobile, so all he could do was yell and curse. From deep below, a rumbling began that was so deep and terrible the ground itself shook and trembled. Good steadied himself and raised his right hand in a strange gesture. He only spoke two words as the roar reached such a volume that scarcely every other noise could be heard. Arise, sin. Out of the pit came a thick, red, oozing appendage, not quite a tongue, but something likely similar. It began to drift along the rim of the pit. Wherever it touched, the sand hissed and turned to clean, clear glass. Slowly, it crept toward Wilbur, who would only scream helplessly as it slid near him, then crawled over his body. The sound of sizzling skin nearly counterpointed the roar before the tongue disappeared. For a moment, Thorpe could see the blackened wreck that was the still howling Wilbur's torso twitch in agony. Then, almost as a blur, it could only have been a massive gray-furred hand erupted from the hole and slammed down onto Wilbur. The force caused blood to spray several feet and screaming to finally, mercifully stop before the hand closed and dragged the smear of what was left of the coach driver into the pit. A crunch followed by a loud, contented huff could be heard before the rumbling subsided and the door was shut and locked with a final clang. Then there was nothing but silence. Sin has claimed another soul, my dear family, Good said with a shaky voice. It was not a shudder of fear that Thorpe saw and heard. It was one of excitement, maybe even ecstasy. The crowd burst into cheers and clapping. Thorpe and Greta, meanwhile, stayed sitting in their chairs, utterly traumatized by what they had witnessed. Greta's hand had clamped so tightly on Thorpe's that he could feel his fingers starting to lose blood flow. He flexed it a little, and she let go, but grabbed onto his arm instead as Good turned and made his way to in front of him. You are blessed, my friends, he said. So rarely do our visitors get to witness our most sacred rituals. Well, without participating, mind you. Come, I imagine you are weary. The storm still rages outside and the sky darkens. You are welcome to stay the night as my personal guests. Surely you would not risk your lives so callously. I'd imagine we got a choice, Thorpe said. Good smiled, once again without humor. You do not. End of chapter 9. This was a fun book to write, and I'm excited to see how you all feel about it. I'm excited to continue the stories of San Dios. So if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them about the book, about me, about my writing process, anything that you like. We still have plenty of time, so I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. Yeah, this feels like when I was a teacher. I guess I can just kind of talk a little bit about what I have coming up in terms of what I'm writing. I am working on a sequel to Where Blood Runs Gold. I'm working on follows a different character from the book, and that would actually make expand into 2 or 3 different books as well. In terms about planning the series, planning the books, I'm very much a pantser in that I have a general idea of what I want to do with the book, kind of a general idea about ideas and characters and major plot points. But other than that, I follow the story and I learn about the story as I go. I'm learning about it as I'm writing it. I'm transcribing it almost. In terms of inspiration, it really just kind of depends. For this particular book, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Red Dead Redemption 2, and that gorgeous story and that's incredible characterization, especially of Arthur Morgan, really struck something from me. Just that kind of good but bad, but good but bad kind of character really interests me. That kind of anti-hero that's trying to do better is really interesting to me. And then I have a weakness for just bizarre, dark, cosmic horror sort of stuff. I love reading all that sort of thing, and I love putting that stuff into my writing, the more serious writing, because it's just so alien. It's so out there. It's so different, and so it gives me kind of free reign to do whatever I want with it. I'm not feeling constricted by a particular story style. I can kind of write what I want, and it all fits in whatever this kind of universe is for. In terms of non this series books, inspiration, it really oftentimes it's just like a phrase that comes to mind or a sentence that comes to mind. There's one book in the Roboverse that I'm still working on that I literally just thought of the word warehouse and went from there. So the inspiration just kind of comes when it comes, but I like to, I don't know, I like to kind of explore and see what I can do with that. In terms of mythology, the book I'm working on right now, the sequel, the follow up to Where Blood Runs Gold, that's that is based on the 12 labors of Hercules, and I put way more time and effort into that one to make sure that the details were right, to change the names, to make sure that all that kind of works. But I'm really excited to see where that one goes. And then I have follow ups for that, like dealing with the gods of Olympus and Theseus and Perseus and all these different ones. I have a bunch to go from there. But really, any kind of mythology is neat. In terms of places, I love like the dark, gritty noir setting for cities. I love I just love exploring kind of this darker area. This kind of this kind of darker area that's a lot of people they do explore, but it's so much more there. Genre wise, I kind of go all over. My first three books were kind of a comedy spy thriller, like Archer, mixed with some Doctor Who, kind of like reality and time bending and very fourth wall meta. Fourth wall didn't really exist; it kind of was just shattered. Like I had characters that were literally just the editors of the book complaining, and but then I have the weird westerns with Where Blood Runs Gold and the sequels to that. But I also have a noir that I'm working on that's pretty far in. And then another one that's kind of more personal. It's kind of dealing with grief. This my father just passed, and how people do that. But then it turns into this big apocalyptic cult thing because, of course, it does. And I'd love to just dabble in all these different areas. I know that people sometimes feel kind of locked down into just people just feel kind of locked down into I have to write this particular genre, that I have to write this particular style. And that's fine, but man, if you want to do something else, do something else. You I know it doesn't necessarily help your sales, but if you're writing for yourself, you want to do something that you really care about. This is my mind. In terms of software for world building, I'm not great at it. I use OneNote, and I have dozens of kind of new notebooks that I've started out within OneNote, with expanded into different books and extended into characters and settings and snippets that I come up with when I'm in the shower or when I'm about to go to sleep or in the car, because those are the only places that really you don't have to think or too much else. But OneNote I found has been really useful in terms of being able to keep track of that. I've used some other websites that have kind of bubbles that have like bubble charts that you can connect, but I found that quickly gets really overwhelming and unwieldy and kind of gets to the point where you can't even focus on the bigger picture because there's so much there. But in general, I'm pretty basic. It's just the OneNote, and then just Word. I don't use Scrivener. I don't use Vellum or anything like that. Just write it down to a Word and go from there. And I definitely have. The question here is who doesn't love stationery? I have so many different books and notebooks that are really never going to get written in. Stuffed away in a drawer because I bought them and I said, hey, I'm definitely going to use these, and I'm probably not. But it's nice to have them just in case, to be able to have those notes around. And it's fascinating to kind of go through those notes, both the physical notes and the notes just online and see how those notes compare to what the final product is. Because there are lines and ideas and kind of story paths that I had intended for really all of my different books in every different case. And there are some that I didn't use. They went a completely different way. They went a way I wasn't expecting, with characters as I wasn't expecting to take on bigger roles. Originally, when I was writing Where Blood Runs Gold, Greta was just kind of a throwaway character to show that this was a good guy, and it turned into her being a very, very important part of the story for Thorpe and for everyone else. So it was neat to kind of see that progression, especially from the notes, like, oh, here's this character, we'll throw her in, see what kind of happens with that. So it's interesting to see, at least to me, how our writing changes over time and how we as writers change and adapt over time, especially in terms of how we write, what we write, kind of what themes and stuff we latch onto. Oh, and this is a good one. I said I'm a pantser, and I totally am. But do I end the stories in the way that I thought? Yes. It really kind of depends. The three comedic books, I had no idea how they were going to end. It was just, well, we'll figure this out as we go. But with Where Blood Runs Gold, I knew how it was going to end. For the noir, I know how it's going to end. And for like all the different follow-up books, I think I know how they're going to end. So I generally have an idea of kind of the opening and the closing in maybe some set pieces. But by and large, aside from those few pieces of stuff that I have kind of locked down, it's wide open, and I get to learn about the story and the different routes that it takes and the roads that it takes throughout the whole process. Looking back at older work, do I notice a difference? Oh yeah, significant difference. I'm better now. I'm much better now. I have a book I still have the book from when I was in middle school. And that thing is kind of like opening the box in Indiana Jones, when people's faces melt off. It's kind of like that for me because it is the epitome of cringe and uncomfortable for me to read it. But compared to that, what I'm writing now is Shakespeare. But I'm proud of how I've kind of changed in terms of a writer. And being able to be more serious, being able to address more serious topics, be able to add more characterization to them. And my goal is, down the line, look back at the ones I'm writing now, be like, what are you doing? You're so much better than this. But that's kind of the goal I think we all have as writers. So I'm just going to keep working on those and see where those take me. I think we've only got a few minutes left. So I will give you a little bit of time to breathe. If you want to find out more about me or about my writing or get in contact with me, I'm on Twitter at Dan Eats Cat Food. There's a long story behind that, but I'm too attached to the name to get rid of it now. Feel free to add me. Feel free to talk to me on there. I basically spend most of my time on there just posting memes and shilling my book and talking to people. So feel free to do that. You can get a hold of me through my website, aaroncross.com. I have some extra stories on there that you might appreciate. But I just am pleased that everyone came and watched me. Hopefully you like the book. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Kindle, physical copy, whatever. But I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you about hopefully that you love my book, but just hearing more about my book and hopefully getting in contact and just being able to chat with you all. So I'll take the last couple minutes and just say thank you, and I hope you have a great day.